Thank you for joining us, Yankee. Hope didn't interrupt you doing anything special.
It has been a busy, unironically busy week, but yeah, obviously I had time.
I figured. I told James, because you weren't here last week, that this week I'd have a more of a theme topic for us.
Yeah, I saw.
And then I but in the middle of the day, saw a message on Discord of some friends here got their PSVR2 delivered. And we've talked about VR in the past, but I figured we'd do a kind of dedicated episode to it. We all have a Quest, a Meta Quest, a Meta Oculus Quest. I don't know what the fuck they're calling it, if they're using both names or just the one. But so I figured we'd talk about it. And I was thinking about it, and I got a question I'm going to lead with, which is, what would it take to get us to actually play it? Because we don't have it, and none of us play it. And I'm like, hey, let's talk about VR for the thing that none of us fucking play regularly. And so I feel like that's a great question. What would it take to get you guys to use your Quest more, or to buy a PSVR 2, or etc. Like, what would it take? And James, you want to go first?
Sure. Personally, I think I would need to see more and better exclusives for it. And also, just for me personally, like, I would probably need to not have the amount of systems I already have. Like, if I had just like a Switch in VR or just a PlayStation in a VR, that's one thing. But I have one of each, including like the VR, and it's just not worth the, keeping it charged, getting everything set up, finding a space for it, having the space for it in general. It's just not worth it when I could just sit on the couch and, play PlayStation or whatever. So I don't know. I think it's super cool. And I think it's a fun, like, gimmicky kind of thing without it, like, trying to, like, demean it. But I don't think it's at a point where it can be, like, the main platform for somebody.
I don't think gimmick demeans it, because it's very, like, I think VR very much understands that's where their appeal is at. And a gimmick very specifically is something that's, like, fun and engaging a couple of times and then immediately drops off a cliff in terms of its entertainment value.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's why PSVR 2, it's an add-on, right? Like, the PSVR 2 is the add-on to the PlayStation 5, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a standalone thing or whatever, which kind of goes to, like, what you're talking about. Like, if you didn't already have all these consoles, right? It does seem like if you only had a PS5, then that makes the PSVR 2 that much more appealing, right?
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious though. Could you clarify, what do you mean by exclusives? Do you mean more VR exclusives or more VR platform exclusives? Like,
I think more actual exclusives for the platform itself, like for VR specifically. Like,
so not necessarily PSVR 2 exclusives, but just
not necessarily
any game that is only in VR, period.
Because usually that means that, like, it's not an afterthought. Obviously, like, a lot of games do have VR support also. Like, Hitman has I don't even know if they've ever fixed it, but it had a VR mode added to it, and it's not good. At least it wasn't. And then on the other hand, you get something like No Man's Sky, which literally today had a very large quality of life update drop that specifically was to coincide with the PSVR 2 and give it a ton of, like, features and updates for that. But there's like a couple games I see on Steam every once in a while that I'm like, that looks really cool and I'd like to play that. It's VR though. And, like, part of me is like, I should set it up so I can figure out how to play that. But the other part of me is like, that's a lot of effort for one game that I don't even know if I like. So I don't know. I'm definitely in the middle where it's not like I'm totally against it, but I definitely haven't seen anything where I'm immediately like, I need to go set that up right now. So.
And Paggy, you, if I remember correctly, when you were using your Quest more regularly, you were using it for fitness, right? Specifically?
Yeah. Same reason that everybody uses it, I think, regularly, besides an incredibly niche audience. Like, the people who get into these games are, like, very often physically active games, like the rhythm games and all that fun stuff. And you're doing it for fitness. You're not necessarily doing it because the game is fun. Just want a game with depth.
End up doing one of the subscriptions, I want to say.
No, I didn't need to. I bought a game. I didn't end up doing anything that was subscription based, though, because that's a massive ripoff, especially for the rhythm-based ones. It's like $15 a month. Like, we'll give you 4 new songs a month, and we'll rotate them in and out. Aren't you lucky?
So I feel like I agree, it's a ripoff. But that's also because I'm a fat piece of shit. I don't exercise. But that being said, I feel like it's arguably don't look at it as you have to not look at it as a game subscription, right? Like you have to look at it as like comparable to a gym membership or a Peloton subscription or an Apple Fitness Plus subscription or whatever, right? Like you have to look at it in that lens. And I think at that point, it's still a ripoff, but
Dude, it's
it's
funny.
like the
I like
price is more justified, I guess.
Yeah, which is why, and they literally, I watched the boxing game that I was playing, switch models, where it was initially like, oh, cool VR boxing, and like very into the VR aspect of like the 3D, like cool glowy 3D images, akin to Beat Saber, and like very much like it's a virtual boxing thing, and then pivoting to like we're a fitness program, and like being all about showing people in front of you, and like to justify a subscription model that they kind of pivoted to like that. So I think they're very much of the same mindset and want to advertise themselves that way, as opposed to advertising like a game where DLC is expected like, hey, it's going to be $5 to $15 and it's going to be a lot. You're going to give everything all up front at once.
Which I think, and I mean, I don't know, but my assumption is the reason people pay for those things is you're not paying for the content. In my mind, you're paying for an obligation. Like
Oh yeah.
if you need to exercise and you know that you need to exercise, and like most people should exercise, you should get you should exercise, you should be healthy, right? Like that's the thing. I need to do this. I don't do that, right? But I feel like those are just like, if paying that $10 a month or whatever gets you to use it every day or every other day and gets you that little bit of extra exercise, then like I feel like, yeah, it's probably worth it to those people, right? Like, and that's great. Like you're not paying for the little bit of content. You're paying for the reason to do it, or the motivation to do it, kind of, but motivation / obligation. Which kind of is just funny. It's like, let me give you money to like give myself an an obligation, which like normally would suck. But again, like if that's what it takes to do it, then that's good. That's awesome. And I think that's why they're successful as a whole, is because like they're a very palatable form of exercise for people who don't like to exercise, right? Like they're fun. You have some there's that literal gamification of it, right? Like, let me get this high score, let me compete with friends, and like the social aspect of it, and that's all fantastic. And it's also just, yeah, it's fun. Like music is fun. Most people listen to music when they work out anyways, right? So like you might as well listen to music and slash some blocks that are coming in rhythm to it or whatever. And that's my take
What
on it, at
always
least.
blows my mind about all those games though is outside of modding, there's just not that many songs. Like it's surprisingly shallow when you think these things would be incredibly easy to set up, and they'd be highly incentivized to set up like 1,000 of them to keep people coming back to try everything. That is what, like, the boxing game I played really did not have that many different music tracks, and definitely base Beat Saber doesn't. It's very odd.
So base Beat Saber doesn't, but Beat Saber at this point has a lot of DLC. Like I'm trying to find a thing, just like a raw number, and I can't.
I mean, obviously Susie is way better qualified to speak on Beat Saber. I'd be really curious if she
She
how
hasn't.
she
She hasn't
feels
even
about
played it in 6 minutes.
yeah, but she used to play it a ton.
That is
I'd be
true.
curious if she like ever got tired of their music library. Like, did it have enough where she was happy with it?
Somewhat. Like you definitely hit the point where it's maybe I should buy one of the DLC packs. Which for
I assume she would have bought
you know,
all of them as much as she played.
oh, absolutely not. No, Susie is the cheapest person on the fucking planet.
This is
She would
very
never
true.
spend money. The only one that we bought is because like I think Meta or Oculus gave us like a $10 thingy-mabobby,
Of
and
course,
so it
you
was
got
like
some
basically,
dealer coupon.
yeah,
Knew it.
exactly, right. Like that's the only reason we have any of them. But yeah, no, there's 118 songs total, I think. I don't know. This thing says 118 rows. I'm assuming that is one row per song. But yeah, so I think it's 118 songs across the base game and then all the DLC for it, which is like quite a lot, right? Like I feel like if you bought them all, right? Like
I mean, I think quantity wise, but I mean, think of the total time, right? Like 118 songs. These are fast-paced songs. They're usually 3 to 5 minutes. Like that's probably at maximum 5 to 8 hours of music for something that you would want to be playing. Like if it's a real, exercise program kind of thing, which they're trying to be, you're going to play for dozens and dozens of hours because you're going to do it once a day for an extended period of time.
Yeah, very true. And I think the reason she also didn't necessarily get super bored, I mean, again, she definitely like got bored on a couple songs. But the big motivation for her was it was split 50-50 between exercise and leaderboards, right? Like, and it wasn't global leaderboards. I don't care about that. I don't think she cares about that. It was leaderboards of friends, right? Like, it was got to get the higher score than our friend, right?
Yeah.
And so that was I think the big motivator.
I don't know. I
Paggy,
feel like that.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like that is niche. Like that desire right there of like, there's a regular reason to keep playing and try and excel and do well in the game is like not something you find enough in VR games. This is what they need. You just need a reason to want to log on like most days or every day, like you do with other games. Because like even more so because it's like James said, it's annoying to clear the space and like set up VR, so you don't want to do it very often as a one-off. Like there's just more barriers to entry. So if you're gonna do it, you want it to be something you want to do regularly. That's fun to do regularly, and VR games just lack that. Like they get so stale so quickly, and the only way to keep it fresh is to dump money into new games, which are often not as fresh as you want them to be because there's just not that many.
So what would it take you? The initial question, Paggy, what would it take you to use your headset these days, or buy the PSVR2, et cetera, et cetera?
More or less what I described, like a game that kind of has a fun core gameplay loop, which still continues to be something that's very challenging for VR games. And then taking that loop and putting it into a system that incentivizes you to play regularly or, get deeper into the game. I thought it was going to be Skyrim. I like kind of wanted to play Skyrim on that, but people said that they continue to struggle with movement in VR, and that it could be tiring to play for extended periods of time. Though people have supposedly sunk like hundreds of hours into VR Skyrim.
Well, so the other thing that I think is interesting is as we've talked about this, I think we've all mostly talked about it in the traditional like sense that you see in the commercials of the person standing there and moving around and all that, right? And I think it can frequently get lost in that like VR can also just be used at your desk, right? Like you don't have to clear space to use it. You can just sit at your desk and put the headset on and like depending on the time, like if for James, you mentioned No Man's Sky earlier, like you would not want to be standing for that, right? Like No Man's Sky, you'd put it on and just play like you normally would play with a mouse and keyboard or controller or flight stick or whatever, which like I'm sure No Man's Sky on PSVR2 with I don't know if PlayStation supports flight sticks, but if they did, I'm sure it'd be dank. No Man's Sky is actually one of the few games I bothered playing sitting down at my desk. I played the Windows Store version actually, which is with Game Pass obviously supports VR, and so I played that in VR, and it was kind of cool. But again, like I played it for like 15 minutes, and I don't think there is a single thing that they could do to make me regularly play that game in VR. Which I guess is my answer to the question is I don't think there's anything. I don't know. Like I love it. It's cool. It's great. But like I don't think I don't know. I struggle to think of what anyone could do to make me play VR games more than let's say 3 hours a week. Right.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I just literally don't think there's anything. I mean, I guess like you can say the standard stuff of like make the technology better, right? Like make it lighter weight, so make it not run as hot, right? So that it's more comfortable. And that's honestly that's probably a big part, right? Like there's probably some like level of like technology advancements that need to happen still of like and I'm very excited. Like I led with friends got PSVR2 delivered today. I'm very excited to go over to their place and try it out because I'm hoping that since the PS5 is doing the heavy lifting, obviously, and it's a brand new system that like I'm hoping it's really comfortable and all that stuff. And so maybe it will be, maybe not. I don't know. Like that and fidelity, right? Like I still feel like, yeah, I don't know. I guess if I were to summarize it, for me, James, it's not even you mentioned, content, right? Like I need it needs content. For me, I don't even think it necessarily needs content. I mean, like that would help, right? But like there's enough stuff there already that is interesting to me, whether that be standalone things like Beat Saber or Audica, which I love, or exercise things like I think it's called Supernatural, maybe, or modes of existing things like No Man's Sky or like Star Wars Squadrons or something like that. But for me, at the end of the day, it's like it is big, it is uncomfortable, and I mean like it's not entirely uncomfortable. Like it's decent, right? Like it's palatable, right? But like it's more uncomfortable than not having anything on your face and staring at a computer screen. And it gets hot, and like it's just, and it looks worse, right? Like it's just the fidelity is not there. Like the games just do not look as good when you're playing them in VR compared to normal, right? Like it doesn't look as good. You have this big heavy thing on your face. It gets hot. You get sweaty. Like I don't know. I feel like it's really great, and there's been great advancements made, and like it's incredible that you can go buy a Quest 2 for like $300 and like don't need anything else. Like that's fantastic. But like I think for me personally, we're still so far out, like until it gets to the point where I would choose to do that as my primary form of playing games, right? Like,
Oh, for sure.
which is a shame because it is like every time I do it, I'm like, damn, this is awesome, and then I set it down and never do it again. And so I don't know. I'm really excited to try my friend's PSVR2 and see how that goes.
I think
Um,
if I had the like PlayStation ones, we'll just use those because that's like the biggest one I could think of for sure. That's like got its own family that already exists with like the PS5. I would probably play it more if like I had the PSVR 2, which I'm not looking to buy one. I don't like actively want one. But if I had it, I would probably play that more than I would play what I already have because one, I like just trust Sony more with like those kind of things just in general. Like with the current PS5 with the haptics, they're not the newest controller, but the like baseline controller has are super good with like the triggers and everything. And it seems like they're bringing those similar features to the VR2.
I believe so. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I totally
And
like, dude, the bow in
yeah.
Horizon,
Mhm.
like that's got to feel great. Like that's
Yeah.
got to feel awesome.
And
But again, like would that do it for you for more than an hour?
I mean,
Right?
I think
Like
it would do it enough for me to, I won't say regularly use the system, but I would use it more than I use what I currently have, which is zero, like less than zero. We
yeah.
used it when my girlfriend bought it, and then we've not used it since. I don't even know where it's at.
This conversation
that's
is making me
storyline.
remember to sell it.
I was gonna say, like, we might.
Oh, that's so sad.
Oh, like, right, I have this
Uh,
thing. I should sell it. Well, I can actually get something for it.
That's fair. I mean, honestly, maybe, yeah.
It's not even for me
Like,
like getting the money from it. It's like I feel bad when something that is meant to be used is not being used. I'd rather give to somebody so
yeah,
they can use it.
Yeah.
I feel bad for it.
I get that. I do. I'm a hoarder though, and Susie's a super duper hoarder, so I don't think we'd ever sell ours. You know, we gotta ask. We gotta. You know, it's always yeah, but maybe one day we'll use it. You know.
But don't
I don't know.
you have two right now?
Oh shit, I do.
Yeah. You should definitely sell one of them.
Well, so yeah, so I have a Windows mixed reality headset, which I got for like $100 one time. It was awesome. It was so cheap. And then yeah, we have a Quest 2. And yeah, no, I haven't touched the like Windows mixed reality one in forever because like you can just connect the Quest 2 to the PC and it's nicer. And so it's like yeah, literally just do that. So yeah, probably should sell the Windows one, but like because no one's gonna buy that, right? Like no one's
No,
gonna buy that
probably
at
no.
all. So all that being said, actually, that's kind of a good segue, right? So Microsoft, you know, at some point was investing money in Windows Mixed Reality, as they call it, which was a combination of basically just like let's make a common set of framework and tools to support both VR and AR experiences on Windows and HoloLens and blah, 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 blah. Anyways, this kind of leads to the natural question with PSVR 2 coming out today. Like, do you all think Microsoft would support VR on the Series X? Right? Like, I feel like I recall them always saying that they're not very interested, but I'm kind of curious what you all think about like if you think they would and if you think they should as two separate things.
Almost assuredly not unless somebody else partnered with them and more or less paid them to do it. Because
Yeah, I
why?
don't
I
see them
mean,
doing it on their own.
I don't understand why anybody competes in that space when Zuckerberg is fucking deranged, is willing to pour all of his company's money into winning that very pointless space. Like there's
Yeah.
no point in competing in it.
What about you, James?
No, I agree. I don't see them doing it on their own unless they have somebody else backing it in like a partnership. And yeah, I just like Packy just said, like there's so much money already getting put into the market for that I don't feel like Microsoft probably feels like they need to do that. Like they already have their own thing working pretty well that they don't need to like overextend into something else just for it to be like half-assed. I feel like they've been more careful with things like that since the initial launch of the Xbox
Yeah.
One, where
Yeah,
they,
ever
you know,
since the
supposed to be online
Kinect.
only. Yeah, basically since the Connect and the online only stuff. And I think they've been more careful and more, I don't know if you want to say strategic, but they've definitely been more careful with how they've done things, more conservative for sure, which I think is like good. Like I may not find the Xbox Series X and like its games and the overall catalog and everything as flashy or as like advanced or as like overall cool as the PS5, but it's definitely more the workhorse of the consoles I have. Like absolutely. Like I play more on the Series X than I
It
do on my
gets the job
PS5.
done, baby.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
great.
it's
I
huge
love it. It's
success.
just
Yeah.
like when I want to play something that's like insane, I'll play the PS5, you know, Horizon, Last of Us 2, whatever else. And then when I want to play something that I know is dependable and gives me a lot more options in general, even if they're not as deep, I turn to the Xbox, you know, and I turn to the Xbox also for like my just general media, which, you know, was what they always they've been shooting for more recently, the last, you know, 5-10 years for it to be like the media hub. So I don't know. That was a lot of extra stuff for your answer, but yeah, I don't see Microsoft doing it without outside help.
I
Here
feel
is
like that's a good way to put it in terms of like the PS5 is like this is my special experience place, and that's why the PSVR 2 actually I feel like builds on what you just said, right?
Yeah.
Like you were saying like I go there to play the cool things, the crazy things or whatever. And if I'm just playing a game and I'm just sitting in front of a TV and like it's just nothing special or whatever, which like again, yeah, like not to discredit it, like it plays it great. Like there's a reason that you then switch to the Series X. But so I think that is an excellent like kind of comparison between the current state of those systems,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like and then I also agree with both of what you said. Like I don't think they would, and I think it would be very stupid if they designed a complete like Xbox exclusive in-house headset. Like I would much rather them, and I think they might, but I still don't think it's likely. But I would much rather them, and arguably think they should, um, partner with the people who are already making. So like I said, they built the software for what they called Windows Mixed Reality, and then Dell and HP and like all the traditional PC manufacturers made the headsets for those, right? And so like I'd much rather like them take that work and just like open it up and let it work on Xbox because like it probably would. Like I said, the Windows Store version of No Man's Sky just worked with VR with that headset, right? Like, and so like I'd rather them just open up what they've already got, or yeah, go one step further and like even partner with like Meta and let you use the Quest headsets on the or Steam, right? But yeah, 100%. Don't think they should make their own. Think they should partner and have someone else build the hardware and just make sure that the Xbox is open and compatible, right?
Yeah.
Like because that would be cool. That'd
Mm-hmm.
definitely be cool. I thought of one last thing too, which is kind of just goes back to what I said. I mentioned technology of like headset needs to be smaller, lighter, not as hot. It needs to look better. There's one other thing that's really crucial too, is completely wireless. And obviously the Quest 2 is completely the Quest and the Quest 2 are completely wireless. I can't remember if the PSVR 2 is.
I don't remember.
But and the Quest 2 at least supports Airlink, I think they call it, with PCs, where you can run the game on your PC and it basically streams wirelessly to the Quest 2, which is good. It works. It still needs to be better. Like that's just another like technology needs to get better thing of like lower wireless latency from where the game is running to where you are playing it on the headset is the last thing I'd say would like I feel like needs to really get improved for me to even consider using it as like daily form of entertainment type thing. Hacky, I feel like you were gonna say something like a couple minutes ago.
You encompassed everything I was gonna say. I just wanted to add to the note of James's description of like all right, well, the PS5 is like the luxury console, and the Xbox Series X is the everyday console. Like a tear is streaming down the face of an Xbox marketing executive. Like they've achieved their exact dream in the space. This is exactly who they want to be. It's easily the
It
better of the
really
two
is.
positions.
I don't think that's true actually. I
It's
bet they would
100%
not
true.
like that comparison.
No, because
like
James's description of like the everyday console is what you put your subscription on, because it's where you get like your most of your games and stuff like
okay,
that.
that's
And it's
fair.
the one you
No, I
use
mean,
way more and like have more
it's
exposure to.
it's what I mean, I don't know who I talked to about it because nobody, like anybody I would talk to already knows this already, but like the way I've seen them is, Sony's definitely made the gaming console and cares less about the like multimedia hub stuff, which like, if you're into more of the game stuff, like that's great, obviously. And Microsoft definitely went down the route of we're gonna make a multimedia system that can also play games. And like they still probably split it more in favor of the games, obviously, because it is an Xbox after all. But like I use the Xbox for way more in general than I do the PlayStation. But man, you give me, Horizon, Last of Us, any Sony exclusive, or even like Call of Duty, which isn't an exclusive but has the haptic feedback on the controller. Like I'm sold. Like give me that instead. So
Yeah, I think
So
Sony's
okay, I think go ahead.
it's just Sony is into actually making high quality games, which is hard and takes creative energy, and Xbox just wants to be your medium / portal into anything that you want to do, particularly games that like whether they have made it or not is not their concern.
yeah,
And that's
look,
why
I'm
they
here
Well,
for
and
both.
again, they obviously want to expand. Microsoft thinks of Xbox as a more of a brand, a service, and a platform at the moment than they do of hardware, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's why they want to expand into mobile and all of that shit and cloud. Like they want to expand to mobile and cloud because they just want it's a brand / service / platform, right? Like the hardware gets you in there and it lets you like the Series X is that workhorse to get you into that environment. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, you're right. Like that's not a thing. I think what I was really trying to say though is I think you're both right in that they're probably extremely like someone's probably extremely happy hearing that. It's like, we achieved our goal of like it's the go-to for most things, right? That being said, I'm sure they would also love to have a Last of Us on their platform that people are like,
Oh
holy
yeah,
shit,
yeah.
guys.
I mean,
Like,
sure,
And
I
you want to
think
win in
that's where
every
I
single
was like,
I
aspect.
also don't feel like they're putting the resources in to do that. All you hear from
the
343, who
acquisitions.
should be their flagship studio, is how mismanaged it is. That's literally the only thing I hear about 343 and the current Halo development cycle is how badly mismanaged it is. So I don't know. Obviously, we're just consumers, but or at least I am. You guys are more in the field than I am. I work at a trampoline park, but
I mean, I no longer
We're still
consider
not close at all.
343 their flagship studio. I
that's why I
consider
said they
Turn
should be.
10 or
It's
They
Playground
should.
Games
story.
or the Coalition as their
I would
flagship
give
at
it
this
to
point.
Coalition because they haven't made anything in a while. 343 should.
When did Gears 5 come out? Wasn't that recent?
It's been a little bit. I don't know.
Definitely not. The
It was
343 as
2019.
mismanaged and bad as they
That
are
was
is definitely their flagship.
pre-COVID. What are you talking about? That's not recent.
Okay, Tactics was 2020 though, right? So like,
Tactics isn't a flagship game. It
yeah.
was a genre
That's fair.
spinoff
That's
of
fair.
of
It's like
a franchise.
Super Mario Rabbids was one of the flagship games for Nintendo.
It's a
fair.
good game.
But
I
I
like
would
it.
expect, that being said, I would expect Gear 6 soon, maybe something.
I don't
Still, like,
know.
I like
Maybe.
It's as bad as like Halo and 343 may have been in people's eyes recently, it's still their flagship, like comfortably. It's
Well,
what everybody
it's
associates
Halo.
with them.
yeah, but it's definitely not their flagship in terms of quality. That's for damn sure.
I mean, that's not the
Right.
argument, though.
But it seems to be the one
Well,
where
okay.
like Microsoft is
Well,
more
so-
involved with the company itself as opposed to everybody who they've acquired since who they want to be their new flagships, where they've been like, here, take the money and then please make good games. Please. We will not interfere. And that seems to be like, I'm sure it's not related, but it feels like with the narrative around 343, Microsoft being like, hey, we know that we can't do it. Like, please, would you all do it properly?
Things that, like, you never know. It's so hard to tell from the outside. Is that a case of too much, interference from above, or too little? I almost feel like it's too little. Like, I feel like someone should have stepped in.
I think they've
sooner and just been
learned.
like, I am making an executive decision, and you all are fucking it up. Like,
343. Well, I think 343 they are way more involved, aren't they? Like a lot of the 343 board is also a part of Big Boy Microsoft, right? Or at least several key
I
members.
want to
That was the lady who
say
stepped down.
Microsoft is more involved in 343. Like I think it's over management. I think.
Yeah,
I pretty sure it's over management on
which
their
was
part at least.
I think it's definitely at a minimum over management from the top levels at the studio. I don't know if it's, but I wonder if it's over management from the very top of 343 and under management from Xbox Game Studios as a whole. But I don't know. Like I said, we'll
Sure.
never know.
yeah, it's
I don't
more
know.
because Xbox Game Studios, if they're doing it right, their sole purpose is just to look at it from the highest level and be like, is this working or not? And then if it's not working, put new people into place to give it a try. Because
Mhm.
if you add in over management to any creative product, like it always suffers, right? That's why they take their approach to their acquisitions the way
Yeah.
that they do.
I think the
Um,
big thing, which we already touched on earlier, was, the subscription model is definitely more important to them now. And I think they've
mhm.
literally turned Game Pass into their flagship product instead of a
Yeah.
specific game, which is,
Honestly, yeah.
again, it's totally fine. Like as we always talk about, like
Yeah,
I enjoy Game
absolutely.
Pass. Was playing Atomic Hearts and it's fantastic, or Atomic Heart, and it's great. But, it's also sad, as all of us are, have all been fans of Microsoft for a long time. I wish they would do whatever they have to do to get back into the game as the flagship product instead of a
Well,
service
and
as the
that's
flagship product. I don't
and
know.
that's why I mentioned Playground and the coalition, because like in terms of quality, at least, like, yeah, Gears 5 and Forza Horizon have been their closest things to an extremely high polished, well made AAA game. That Gears 5 still had its own problems,
Sure.
whereas Forza Horizon actually has been mostly problem free, other than semi getting stale because they realize that's the only thing they can make well and they keep pushing it out, and so it's getting kind of stale. But yeah, no, like those are, I definitely think, like the closest thing they have to that level
I
of
would say they
premium
are,
polish.
but I think we keep using the word flagship, and that's what I think of is it's got to have the popular draw also. Like not that those games were
Yeah,
not
yeah.
financially successful. Like they're well made. They have a lot of people that like them, obviously, but like you look at like The Last of Us Part 2, or I don't want to say Horizon. Horizon I don't think sold super well comparatively, which is unfortunate because it's great. But like Last of Us Part 2, for example, or any of the Naughty Dog games, or anything else that has been
Oh,
a mainline
God of
Sony
War.
game, their entire
God of
God,
War.
thank you, yeah, God of War. You look at the
That's
sales
like
and
the
the public
obvious one.
reception, and I've been watching The Last of Us show. Sorry, and Last of Us is also like super personally important to me.
I mean, yeah, no, absolutely.
Um, they have the sales numbers, the personal like popular reception, and the critical reception. Like they have all of it, and I don't think Microsoft has that all three right now, which
Yeah,
is why I
definitely not.
wouldn't say
I definitely don't.
they have a flagship like game at least like they should. Like it's a wishful idea, but
It's also
it's a
part of why we think that they should, right? It's like Sony manages to do it with so many different studios,
yeah.
like so consistently, and it's like how can Microsoft not really do it like
I would
once?
argue too, though, Sony has more experience in that.
Oh, definitely.
To be fair, they're also like a older game company than Microsoft.
Is
Like
that
Microsoft,
true?
Greg, I don't
Sony's
know.
an entertainment company.
Greg had, or not Greg, God, Sony had, it's had Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, and Jack and Daxter. Those were like the three flagships, other than like JRPGs and stuff, that like Sony had on the Western scene for so long, and all three of those studios still continue to make new and different games. Like we're still getting really, really, really good Ratchet and Clank games. Obviously, Naughty Dog has moved on to Uncharted and The Last of Us, and Sucker Punch did Infamous and Ghost of Tsushima. Like their mainline Western studios are all still producing games that are all very high quality and very well received. Microsoft had Halo, and then I don't know what else other than Gears, which is kind of like an attempt at another one.
They
I don't
also
know
had
what you
Halo
would.
2 and Halo 3. And don't
Well,
forget Reach.
sure. I don't know what else you would give Microsoft. Like they don't have the pedigree of having multiple
Well,
large
and that's kind
scale
of,
like
yes.
flagship lines of games. Like they just don't,
I
and
think
not
what
that
I
it's
was
a
trying
bad
to say
thing, but
is there's no reason they shouldn't, though, right?
no,
Like
I
it's
agree.
not it's not an experience or like any of that thing, right? Like they've been in the business long enough, and the
Sure.
people at the studios have been in the business long enough that like it seems like there's no reason why they can't have that same, or not just why they can't, but why they don't already
I
have
know.
that same.
I
It is really weird.
I mean,
And
like
again,
Like
they're starting to, because I mean they acquired Bethesda, so like they're about to have all of Bethesda's stuff as their mainline series, I guess.
So
It's
what,
just
this
not
is gonna
theirs.
be like Bethesda's fall. It's becoming part of Microsoft and inheriting their curse.
Oh, I hope not. Please
that
don't
would
say
be so
that.
sad.
Bethesda makes two of my favorite franchises.
I think
Yeah.
most of the internet would be heartbroken if. I mean, most
Look,
of the
if
internet is going to be
Starfield's
heartbroken
not
if.
good, I'm gonna lose my
Yeah.
mind. The first new Bethesda IP in forever, I'm gonna lose it.
Scrolls 6 is not amazing. People are going to riot.
That'll be my breaking point.
Yeah, like that's the one. That's going to be the ultimate
Like
test of
Starfield will
whether
be
all
the
this is
start
worth
of it, but if 6 isn't good, I will literally I'll have to quit. I'll just quit everything.
I'll say like it's not like Microsoft hasn't put out speaking of Starfield, like Starfield Light was what's it called? The Outer Worlds? Yeah. Like that was a good
As
game.
Obsidian, yeah.
Oh, I forgot that was Obsidian.
But that's still just like that is not the same quality or level of polish
No.
at anything coming out of Sony first party studios, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely not, no. They also do kind of a different style of game. It's very like cinematic movie-esque that we've talked about extensively. Like they're kind of like
yeah.
movie
Well, again,
approach to
like I
games.
said, the only thing I can even kind of think of for Microsoft in recent history is Gears and Forza, and specifically the campaign in Gears, right? Like
Yeah.
the Gears 5 campaign is beautiful. It plays well. It's fun. It's got an interesting enough story, right? Like, and it's well made and polished, right? And that's the only thing in even kind of recent history that like even pretends to come close, and it's still not at the same level. And that was, yeah, like you said, 3.5, 4 years ago at this point, right? Like, and so maybe 6 will be different. Like maybe 6 is what takes it from almost there to there. But then it's like, okay, that's one thing in however many times.
So
now
unlikely.
you get all of your other studios to do the same thing. Like,
I just
That's
can't
That's
see.
what I just
Gears-
think that's what it is. It's the pedigree thing, right? Is that these big studios for Sony, like that's just what they've always, Naughty Dog especially, because they've always made, other than, I mean, even Jack and Daxter had a lot of cinematic for its time, like major emotional moments and good characters, and it was still like an open world platforming game after the first one, but like these other like Microsoft studios don't have that history. Like even if like the Ship of Theseus, even if the teams are completely different, the studio it still has the reputation and the
excellent.
pedigree, right? So
Excellent
I don't know.
metaphor. Yeah. No, it's fair. Yeah. I think literally excellent metaphor with the Ship of Theseus.
It's also like
Um,
companies like that build cultures, like
Yeah,
the
exactly.
cultures that build good games over
That's
time.
a
That's
good
what
word
really
for it
is.
that I was mentally skirting around. Is like even if the people are not the same, they have the history, the culture, and their past things to look at and be like, this is what we could strive to do again or do better. So
Exactly.
that's why I look at Guerrilla Games, who made Horizon and then previously made Sony's only like exclusive first person shooter that was on the same almost scale as like Halo, like vaguely, was Killzone. And I'm personally a huge fan of Killzone back in the day, from the first one all the way up through Shadowfall, I think was the most recent one. They're all great and beautiful games, and that you can see where they took that experience with making like really, really pretty action oriented games and turning them into Horizon. And they started with the first Killzone was like good, but it was the kind of game where they were like, that was back when like E3 trailers would come out, and then the game would come out and it would look nothing like the E3 trailer. And then they made Killzone 2 and the E3 trailer came out and people were like, oh, it's not going to happen. It's going to look like shit. And they matched it like shot for shot, like no issue. So I don't know. I just think Sony has such a better hold on the studios for like things like that, for sure. They've made that their product is that level of quality.
100%. Microsoft has just shown they are good at tactically opening their wallet, which is a winning strat. Admittedly, we talk about like having a great studio. You can also turn to the guy who makes Vampire Survivors and be like, we'll give you $100 please let us put your very, very popular game on Game Pass, and they will do it. And then people like me will continue to pay the subscription because they put games like that on Game
That's
Pass.
great.
I've heard, actually, we've obviously moved on from VR. I think we can all summarize it as VR is cool, but still not,
I just don't think it's there
it's
yet.
still gimmicky. Yeah, it's not daily driver material
No.
yet.
No.
So now continuing on with what we were saying, I go ahead and mention some other kind of interesting things that I saw in the news. So one is, this has been talked about, but I think it was officially signed, ink on paper. Microsoft agreed to bring Call of Duty and potentially other Xbox games to the Nintendo platforms for the next 10 years, which is very cool. That is officially 100% signed in paper, if that deal goes through. That deal being the Activision Blizzard acquisition. The other interesting thing is, and I think this is where Microsoft is going to want to start transitioning more towards what we're talking about, where it's great that Game Pass is their flagship thing at this moment, and like that's the draw because it's great, right? But like I do think they're going to need to continue to shove money into like getting high quality AAA premier polished games, whether that be to then put them on Nintendo or put them on fucking even mobile, or this other one, which is the particularly interesting one, is they also signed an agreement. I think it was maybe also 10 years, but I don't know for sure, that Xbox Game Studios PC games will be playable on NVIDIA GeForce Now, which is particularly interesting because like, clearly Microsoft's pushing their own cloud type thing. And so it's very cool seeing them basically say like, oh, well, you can also play our games on NVIDIA GeForce Now if you want. Which like the fact that they're doing that, that's them not pushing Game Pass, right? Like if they want to make money from that deal at this point, like they need to have a game that people want to play on GeForce Now or Switch, right? And so like it seems like they're starting to hopefully close that gap, but who the fuck knows? And it'll be interesting. I just thought those were two kind of interesting pieces of news. And then the other thing I saw was there's a couple of indie developers or like heads of indie studios that they were just like reiterating the fact that it was like, I think the last line of the thing I remember reading was, we are going to try and get every single game we make on Game Pass from now on, which is like, that's what you're talking about with the guy who made Vampire Survivors, right? Of just like getting, even the smaller games, right? Like that aren't the big things, and just having a good place for that there.
It creates that new, I think that's most important for exactly who you just described, where it's not, I think the Vampire Survivor people of the world, like, because they're usually one person studios, I think of like that, and on a much, much larger scale, like the Stardew Valleys of the world, they end up fine because they hit the lottery and like getting as many sales as they did. Like, because they're one person, all that money is coming to them. It's not like being distributed out to like a bunch of different developers or even the very small studios. It really helps the B and C tier indie studios who like are looking for that consistent source of revenue, and that is selling their games to Game Pass. It's a much more guaranteed route than hoping one of the multiple games that you have in flight hits it big.
You know what I just realized? I am curious. I wonder if is Sony positioned to kind of do the best of both worlds here. And so what I'm wondering is, I'm going to take us back to VR actually in PSVR2. I wonder, and I don't know, and I'm going to look this up, and I'm going to ask my friends who just got it. So Sony obviously has their 3 tiers of thing. They have normal PlayStation Plus thingy, then they have the PlayStation Plus Game Pass version thingy, and then they have the like PlayStation Plus PS3 cloud streaming tier thing. Anyways, the middle one, the only one that anybody should ever buy, because who the fuck wants to stream PS3 games? It's stupid. The middle one, they don't have their first party titles day and date, right? Which is a huge bummer, right? But I wonder, is that going to solve maybe, James, your VR problem, right? Like if you don't, or not just both of yours actually, right? Because Packy, you were talking about earlier, you were like, oh, it gets kind of stale, and then the only way to solve that problem is you just have to buy a new game, try a new experience, right? And so like just having PSVR2 games in their middle tier of their services solve that problem, right? Like obviously the
There's no way they'll have
Horizon,
enough.
what I don't know, right? Like definitely not
PSVR, I was gonna
initially,
say,
right?
it's
But
surprising to hear
like
you talk about VR through the PSVR stuff, because that is like within a niche platform, the nichest part of it, because they don't really play with others. Like they have a couple crossovers, but like not everybody else, with Meta and the typical PC VR stuff has a fair bit of crossover. I feel like there's the least with PSVR, and they have their own set of
oh,
exclusives too.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
we've
they
talked
definitely do.
previously about mods on PC is a big thing that helps save a lot of VR games,
Mhm.
right? Whether that be Mountain Blade Sorcery, I think is what it is. Or is it Mountain Blade? I don't know. The one where
Something
you see
along that
people
lines.
dismantling people and then
Yeah.
they have a lightsaber and they chop off the head with the lightsaber instead or whatever, right? Like yeah, absolutely. You're right. That's funny that I'm talking about PSVR or talking about VR, the VR medium through PlayStation VR. But again, actually now I am really wondering, right? Like I'm pretty sure No Man's Sky is in their Game Pass equivalent. And James, you mentioned it got a big old PSVR2 update. And so
Mhm.
like, oh my God, that actually, oh shit, that's really interesting and tempting. Like the premise of I don't have to buy VR games, right? Because like I'm not gonna pay $15 or $30 for a game that I'm gonna play for 1 hour, right? Like that's not gonna happen. But if it's already in my subscription service that I'm already paying for, and like I get to try out, fucking shooting the bow in Horizon and VR, like, damn, that's actually really tempting. Like I think that solves one of the problems of it's a lot of gimmicks and it feels like you have to just like try all the different games, but no one's going to do that. And so yeah, maybe that subscription service solves that problem. And I totally wouldn't be surprised if Meta introduces a Oculus Game Pass, right? Like to be fair, I feel like I would be surprised if everybody introduces their own thing. I mean, Ubisoft has it, EA has it, Microsoft, Sony have it, and so yeah, I totally wouldn't be surprised if there's like an Oculus Quest Game Pass thing. And honestly, I would at least do that trial. I would 100% do that trial, if nothing else, just to try out all the things, and then
I'm
maybe keep it. I don't know.
sure if Meta doesn't already offer a software bundle, they will soon, and it will increasingly have games on it.
Yeah, because it goes back to the big thing is I said the trial, right? But they don't
Mhm.
want the trial. They want me to keep paying, right? And so it's
Mhm.
how often can you put new content on there? And so that's the only reason why I feel like Sony might be in a really good position to do that
Mhm.
if not VR specific games, but games with VR options like No Man's Sky, for example, right? Like I feel like Sony might be in a really good position to populate PlayStation Plus Extra with those games and make it a really good value proposition and solve one of the many, many problems we talked about earlier. Um, damn, I now seriously, I'm so excited to go over to my friend's house and see what games they have because they have the subscription, they have the PS Plus Extra, and so I'd be very excited to go see what games they already have just through that.
Yeah, I think that would definitely make a good fit. If they like they Sony should definitely do something like that. It would make so much sense with them releasing the new headset.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if it's a thing like what the existing catalog is, but I'm distracted easily. So, um, anyways, yeah, I just like I said, that was an interesting little thought at the moment, connecting all the dots that we were talking about, right? Like looping back to the beginning of our conversation. So, which on that note, unless you guys have anything else, probably end it there. Unless James, you want to talk about? I know said you were playing Atomic Heart
Heart, yes.
singular.
It had me absolutely enthralled yesterday for like 4 hours. It's a little janky as you would expect from a double A game, but the world and art design and music is so interesting. And maybe it's just me. I will admit I love like the Soviet utopianism aesthetic. Like when you go look at old Soviet era like propaganda posters, like their vision of the future through science and like human equality, which obviously was not reflected in real life in any way, but that aesthetic is something I really like. And that game is just that, like entirely. Um, but yeah, that game went from being what I suspected to be entirely vaporware, being something that would never actually release and was just a pipe dream, to being a game I can play and played for free through Game Pass. Because I probably wouldn't have bought it full price, but definitely on Game Pass. Yeah, I was very, very absorbed into it for like 4 hours last night. Like, I was on Discord with Jacob and some of our other friends and like his brother, and I didn't talk for like 3 hours straight while they were all having conversations. I was so wrapped into
Yeah,
it.
dude, that's great.
It's a
Yeah.
really narrative heavy game, right? That'd be a hard game to be on a call for.
It's definitely, it's very BioShock.
I would have dropped.
It's
I totally would have
very
dropped.
much like a Soviet utopia BioShock. It literally takes place on a city in the sky, at least partially, just like BioShock Infinite, except it's Russia and it's in the future. I don't know. It's really, really cool. Combat's a little janky and not the best, but it's good enough that I can like I will gladly deal with it. So I don't know. I definitely recommend it, and I'm just very impressed that it went from being basically non-existent for, like years, literally not a real thing, to being a like not just a product, but like an enjoyable, surprisingly good product. So yeah, I don't know. It's great.
It is crazy. It is that and Forspoken. I remember both of their initial, like, they were essentially technical demos when they put clips out on the internet that went like massively viral. And I remember thinking, wow, those are crazy. But it kind of like fell into that group of, you see those all the time and they never turn into anything.
Of course, yeah.
Both of those games turned into like pretty big releases. Thank God, like Atomic Heart I know it's gotten some criticism that I've seen, but like most people seem to agree with you. Like,
I mean, it's
gorgeous game.
Very positive on Steam, which for something like that you would never expect. Like, no
especially
offense
right
to
now, right?
Yeah, no offense to that, but like it's not a game that you would be like, oh, people like, especially on Steam, who are, I don't know, I just feel like they have high standards for things because they're PC gamers, and it's at very positive with 4,500 reviews. Like, that's crazy. Dude, for a completely new random game.
Some of those PC gamers have just such bizarre. Like, I saw some post, some meme that was like, actually, I think it was about Atomic Heart, and I think it was the Squidward meme where he comes up with the chair excited, and then he sees something and then he gets upset and turns around. Anyways, the first square was, I think it was Atomic Heart, excited to play it, and the second one where he like sees it and turns around, it's like, it was I think like the anti-cheat they were using or something, and like people were like upset about this, and I'm like, why? Like, why is this the thing that like I don't know, like it's so baffling to me. I'm like, it seems like such a silly, ridiculous thing to just be like, oh, I'm not gonna play this game because it was de novo anti-cheat or something like that.
People get
and
so
I was just like, I don't get it, like. Especially because like Steam has an excellent refund policy, and so like if your concern is like de novo anti-cheat or whatever the fuck it is, like ruins the performance of the game, then just like buy it, try it, see if it actually causes a problem, or if you're just being hysterical, which you're probably just being hysterical, and then like if it does, then go refund it, right? Like, it's just so absurd to me that like someone was excited to play Atomic Heart. They saw, oh, it's using de novo anti-cheat, and then just like, nope, not gonna play. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it's just so random. Like, I just don't get it. Like, and maybe it's just because I don't play enough games on PC, and when I do play them on PC, it's a large amount of them aren't through Steam, right? And so like I've never played a game with de novo anti-cheat, I think, right? And so like, I don't know, maybe it is as bad as people think, but like, it just seems baffling to me that's the line in the sand for them of like, oh, nope, can't play it because of this. That's just crazy. But I'm really glad to hear that you're getting as enthralled as you are in it.
I love it. And again, it might just be a me thing because I like already love that aesthetic. So like, to me, that's, if we could jump into those propaganda posters, like, this might be like outing me as like a filthy liberal or whatever. But like, if we could jump into those propaganda posters and that was the life I lived, I'd be happy. I would love the science inequality focused push to the stars for the betterment of all humanity. That's my dream. And even though in the game you're in the falling of it just like you are in BioShock, but it's still just so pretty, and so they just did such a good job. It's great.
It's awesome to hear. Yeah, I'm excited to try it at some point. I started Mortal Shell. I wanted to.
I tried. I tried.
This is why I love Game Pass, because this is my can I play a Dark Souls game? That's
I'm telling you, man,
I'm not gonna
just play Elden Ring. It's the best for a beginner of all of them.
And that's what I'm saying is like I'm not convinced enough to spend the money on it, but Mortal Shell's on Game Pass, and so far I have actually been enjoying it enough. I mean, it's not like, I don't know, it's not the best thing ever, right? But like I haven't rage quit, which is the most important thing, right? And so like because I haven't rage quit, I am thinking I could justify buying Elden Ring and playing. And
speaking as someone who has bashed their head against every single FromSoft game since the first Dark Souls, I didn't play Demon Souls until the Blue Point remake, and was like frustrated with all of them and couldn't do it, but really wanted to because I love world building and I love their world building specifically. Elden Ring is the one for a beginner to jump into. It is the least frustrating as a beginner, and you'll learn it eventually, and then it'll be the only game that you've beaten of their catalog, just like me.
I think we've talked about this before, but like, why aren't trials a thing for every game?
I don't know.
Every game not have a trial?
So hard as like an entire industry. Like they're starting to come back a little bit, but not really.
I mean, like EA, if you have EA Play, which is included with Game Pass Ultimate, they give you 10 hours, which is actually, I feel like, crazy generous.
Yeah, 10 hours, right? It's good. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, like Game Pass is solving for me that demo problem, and I'm using Mortal Shell as a proxy for Elden Ring, because you're right. I just want to play 1 hour of Elden Ring without buying it to know if I can stand it. Because I'm not going to blow $40 or $60 on it just to get 2 hours into it and realize I fucking hate myself. And so I've done that too many times, and I'm not doing it again. And so
good.
I would love demos. Please, everybody give me more demos, whether it be like the developers themselves doing it, or honestly, I feel like the platform holders should do it, right? Like I feel like that's on Sony and Microsoft, and Steam does it inadvertently through the refund policy, right? But like I feel like Microsoft and Sony need to do a better job of like having the tools to provide demos, like an hour-long gameplay demo of a game. And it could be a dedicated demo that puts you somewhere else randomly. But in my personal opinion, I don't even want a demo. I want a trial. I want a 1 hour trial of the full game. And like, know what, Microsoft, you got this great cloud streaming technology. Do it on there. Let me stream the game for an hour.
They must have the tools for this.
Oh,
they
certainly
do. They must not have a driving reason to do so. If there's a big demand for it, and again, they have the tools to do it, they'd be doing it. But
I mean, even
those people just don't.
2 generations ago, the 360 still had a pretty extensive demo library, and they've gotten away from it. And I'm sure part of the reason they've gotten away from it, one, is complexity of like the products they're making in general, just roughly. But I'm sure it's also just literally because, if you can try things without buying them first, why would you buy more things? You got to push sales.
Yeah. But maybe Game Pass is going to force it, because it's like, well, why would I buy it when it's on Game Pass? And so now it's like, oh, well, shit, I need to give them a 1 hour trial of this game that isn't on Game Pass so they know that they should buy it. And I'm saying maybe we're getting there.
I'd hope so, but I don't know.
Anyways, that being said, I will let you all get on with your nights. And thanks for joining, everybody. Thanks for listening, and catch you next week. Bye.